Welcome to FinTech Fun Talks. We are with our special guest today, Mike Orlando. Welcome, Mike.
Hi, Chrissy. Great to see you. Thanks for
You
having me.
too. You too. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Absolutely.
We're talking to Mike. He is a long timer in the fintech industry with a lot of experience, and we're talking to him about the business that he founded. And so, Mike, can you tell us a bit about your background and what led you to the world of fintech?
Yeah, for sure. I, I've been in fintech for 25 plus years. I think 1998 is when I started. It wasn't even fintech at that time.
Yeah.
I worked, yeah, so it was kind of fintech before fintech and before it was cool. And I worked for a payment software company. And nobody knew what a payment software company was because companies really weren't online selling. And we
Yeah.
were kind of an innovator and a pioneer in that space, working with large organizations, Microsoft, Symantec, and others that wanted to kind of bring their products to an e-commerce environment, but didn't have a way to connect to the payment networks. And our software application allowed them to do that.
Okay.
And so I was a sales guy, going out and selling to companies. My big hit and kind of what made my mark in this industry was T-Mobile.
Oh,
Um,
cool. Yeah.
yeah, so that was a big transaction for me and kind of set the tone for where I was going to go forward. That company ended up getting acquired by CyberSource. We became the largest payment gateway in the industry, dealing with about 45% of all global e-commerce transactions at one point. In 2010, we sold the company to Visa. So I went to Visa for a bit of time and then left there to look at other opportunities in the fintech business and founding my own company, FitPay, in 2014.
Um, so can you tell me what was the defining moment or inspiration that led you to start your own company?
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting story. I had just left Visa. I was with a friend of mine that lived in my neighborhood, also who worked at Visa,
Oh,
and we used to go on a Friday afternoon bike ride. And so we took off for this 30-mile bike ride. And before the ride, the plan was we were going to do this ride, stop at a local pub for a beer. And
mhm.
so I took a Ziploc bag and I put my debit card, $20 bill, and my cell phone and a chocolate protein bar in the Ziploc bag. Zip that up, put it in the back pocket of my jersey. And after 30 miles in 80-degree weather, when I got to the pub, that chocolate bar had melted all over all of that stuff. And so we ordered the beers, and I was paying because he didn't bring his stuff. So like I had no way to pay because it was just like a disaster. And I said to this guy, I go, what is this? I have to bring all this stuff and I can't use it. It should be an
Mhm.
easier way. Like I was wearing a Garmin watch at the time because I used it to track my rides. I said, this device knows everything about me. It knows where I am. It knows my heart rate. It knows the friends I have because we shared through Strava and other devices. So
Yeah.
why can't I use this for identity? And then once they know my identity, my payment credential should be able to be stored on it.
Hmm.
Um, and so my friend said, yeah, it's a brilliant idea. Why don't you do that? And I spent the next 9 months figuring it out, how we could do that. Recruited a friend of mine who was chief software architect at Visa to join me. And on September 1st, 2014, we both left our jobs and started coding. And I'm not a coder, so that was odd. He was, so he made up for my mistakes. But like 30 days later, we hired a bunch of other engineers, and I went off and kind of built the strategy and whatever. And 3 years later, we launched the platform, which was contactless payments on devices. We launched with Garmin.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh, and over the period of 2.5 years, we built a base of about 5 million users, um, roughly 750 banks globally. All the payment networks were integrated to us. We had other partners like Swatch, Mercedes, Fitbit for a while, all connected to our platform.
Wow, that's really cool. And you came about it by just having a real everyday problem that needed to be fixed. So I love it. And look how quickly that was able to scale and grow. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. It was exciting, and it was a different time because it was before, contactless payments was really happening. We started
Mhm.
before Apple Pay was uh, existed. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, sure,
yeah.
it was in the lab of Apple Pay, but like it wasn't out yet. We were a little bit ahead of that, and they actually helped validate what we were doing, both in terms of the user experience and with the payment networks. When they announced Apple Pay, my partner came to me and goes, "We're dead. Like." now we're done. And I said, actually, no, we're not, because the largest company in the world partnered with one of the largest, Apple, one of the largest
Yep.
companies in the largest payment network, Visa and MasterCard, to validate our idea and pave the way for how users will understand what contactless payments are, how they'll understand the security of it. And so for us as a really small company trying to advocate for that message, it would have been a real challenge. And they helped kind of do that. And then we became the Apple Pay for every other device manufacturer who was looking for a way to connect into the networks.
And that's such an opportunity because yes, you've got Apple and it is big and they're a huge name in the world and people love using it. But there are so many others as well. And you are able to go in and be that foundation for them. That's amazing.
And then late 2019, we sold the company to Gar.
Okay. Yes.
So they acquired Garmin. It's an interesting organization, great company. I worked there for just a short period of time post acquisition, but everything for them is vertically integrated. So they own everything.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Only from the design through manufacturing, through distribution, and so forth. And the only software that they ever put into any of their devices that they didn't build internally was ours.
Oh,
And
really?
we created, when we got to a certain point of adoption, I mentioned the 5 million users, uh, their CEO and others got really uh, uncomfortable with the fact that like they didn't own it and they didn't control it. So they came in and bought the company, and which was great because my 40, 45, 48 salespeople, engineers and folks all went to work for Garmin. Many of them still work there today. We were in Boulder. They established a technology hub in Boulder, Garmin did. And so they moved people from Kansas City and other places to Boulder to join our team. And so it ended up being a really great event for everyone.
Sounds like the best case scenario that you can have with any type of merger, right? Acquisition. Yeah.
The only problem is they had a CEO, so they didn't need me anymore.
What I know, right? Why don't
Right.
they want to double up? It sounds kind of
Exactly.
crazy.
Plus, everybody in their exec team is an engineer, and I didn't have an engineering degree, so there you go. All good.
Okay. Yeah. That is interesting because you can't yeah, you can't be everything to everyone. And if they're only looking for the text, what do you do? What do you do? But you had good opportunities after that too, it sounds
Yeah.
like.
So I went. Following that, I went to Yapstone. Became CEO of Yapstone. Sold that company to Velo Payments a little over a year and a half ago. So yeah, it's been a progressive career for me. And as we talked about, just before this
Yeah.
call, we were prepping, like seen a lot. Like I said, like maybe too much. I don't know, but it's a great
Some things we
business.
don't want to see.
Yeah, I don't know where I'd be. Uh, I don't know where I'd be without being in this industry, having this experiences, the relationships I built, friends, my spouse, like
Yeah.
all centered around FinTech, as it turns out.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's amazing how that can be. And I don't know if you feel this way, but having been in the industry as long as I have been and as long as you have been, it's not something that I ever felt like, um, when you're in high school and college and you're thinking about careers, fintech is not something that I thought about. And yet it has shaped my entire career. It has been what I have been in. And so, but it's been a great place to be.
Yeah, I love it. I remember when I first took the job at Paylinks, I was there maybe 2 months, and I came home one night and I said, I don't get it. I hate it. I don't really understand this payment stuff. And all I said, stick it out. Like you're good at what you do, just stick it out. And I ended up about 30 days later getting a little deal, uh, and another little one. And then it ended up, like you said, just being the defining part of my career over the last
Mhm.
25 years. And what I'll talk about, and what people know me for, and so forth. And really what my passion's been focused on for almost half of my life now.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious, as you're talking about building this company and you saw a lot of success and then eventually were able to sell it to Garmin, but what were some of the challenges that you faced in the early days of launching your fintech startup?
Yeah, the hardest thing for us, I think, was we're twofold. One,
Yeah.
and this is the same, I think, for any company, is the funding and having the money you need to kind of see your dream and your vision come to fruition. Because the money's always slower coming in, and then you go through it way faster than you think you can. And the technology, because we were building this platform from the ground up,
Yeah.
it took longer to get going. We had to deal with the payment networks that were slow moving, and so forth. I think now there's a lot more of those barriers that have opened up. The companies, particularly the banks and payment networks and other kind of big folks, have embraced innovation
Yeah.
and have threads within their organizations to nurture it, provide access to innovative companies, innovators, and so forth. And so that part is easier, but you still have that piece where you got to figure out, like, hey, am I going to be able to pay the bills long enough to get this to market?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and then secondly, I think would be just the overall adoption. As I mentioned, we were early on in this business and what we were trying to do. And could we build enough momentum behind us to get the users and what we knew was going to be a great user experience for everyone
Yeah.
to uh, to understand that and adopt the behaviors that were required. And like I said, Apple helped us with that by bringing it to a phone. For us, it was just that we felt an easier, less friction inhibiting way to do it if you had your watch or a ring or something like that. And here we are. So those were the things. And I guess the third thing would be people. Like
Okay.
you've got to have really strong people, particularly in in a startup or in it, whether it's fintech or anything else. You've got to have people that believe in the mission, want to commit to it, uh, want to put their personal reputation, their time, sacrifice a bit of their their life, their family life, and so forth to make it happen. And that's a unique set of people to find and do that. And I was fortunate to find people in the very beginning to do that. And as we grew, people that continue to have that ethos around the way that they wanted to operate in the company that they wanted to work for.
I'm glad you're able to find that. It can be a huge challenge, especially because, as you mentioned, you need someone who has the mindset for that growth, for wearing multiple hats, as is commonly said, but also it's hard because it is a startup and there's a lot of unknowns in the future. And so getting the people who not only have that drive and that mentality for a startup, but are also willing to take the risks, that can be a big deal. So I'm really glad that you were able to find the type of people that you needed to make your company successful and grow.
Yeah, and I think that's really been a defining part of a lot of my career has
Yeah.
been finding those people at each stage of whatever organization I was in. That it's really you know uh, just like everything else, it takes a village to be
Mhm.
successful in in any parts of your life, and your professional life, your company life is no different than that. And you've got to surround yourself with people that you can trust, that believe in you, that you can trust and believe in, and
Mhm.
um, and can go forward.
Yeah, yeah, very good point. Did you do a lot of that recruiting yourself in the early days? I imagine you probably
Yeah,
did. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And it really a lot of the people that we brought in initially were people that we had worked with before,
Oh,
people that
yeah.
knew us, people that were at a point in their life where they were okay taking a little bit of a flight. We
Mhm.
brought in, we did a lot of college recruitment. I mentioned we were based
Okay.
in Boulder, so we
Mhm.
spent a lot of time at the University of Colorado and their computer science department. Scott Seedlink, who was my co-founder, did a lot of mentoring workshops there. We did coding boot camps and things like that. So as people graduated through those programs, we were able to bring people in that way. And nothing better than getting someone fresh out of college that's just ready to go.
Right, right. That has the education and some of the learnings that you're looking for. That's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
I'm curious to get some of your thoughts on the industry in general, having the experience that you do. I'm sure you've got some great insights for us. What are some of the biggest trends that you have seen shaping the fintech industry right now?
Yeah. So I think the biggest one, let's say over the last 5 or 6 years, has really been two things: the digitization of
Yeah.
payments, right, where we've gone away from the physical card,
Yeah.
certainly exited cash in a way
Yeah.
that and in a velocity that I think no one expected. I
Yeah.
remember being at Visa. back in 2012, and the goal was like no cash. Like they wanted to get cash out of, it's in their benefit, right? But like to get
For
cash out of
sure.
the system. And I mean, it's there. The places that don't take cash anymore, that are focused on solely taking digital based transactions, whether it be a card or Venmo or something else, is interesting. So I think that's one. And then secondly, it's the democratization of fintech, like how this digital world has really opened up uh, access to people and economies that may not have had it in the traditional way that financial systems operated a decade ago or 20 years ago. And I think those are the two biggest things that I think it has happened. And really what that's done is kind of opened people's eyes into the opportunity and what's possible. And so out of that, you've seen a lot of new innovation, a lot of new trends, and a lot of new things come out. Buy now, pay later, um,
Yep.
uh, instant instant access to funding, right? So the SoFis and so instant credit access, access to financial systems for the un and underbanked. Like all of those things have come because of the first two things I mentioned, and people coming in and trying to solve for a problem that either faced an individual or a sector of people that they felt that they could help improve.
And it's really interesting to see, a lot of these things as they impact our society. As you mentioned, addressing those markets who were underserved with payments and the ways that they can pay, to see how that has made us a bit more of a global community has
Mm-hmm.
been really interesting to me to watch. And as I meet with people like yourself to see how new technologies are coming out to help in that way and to make cross-border payments or even payments in those underserved areas just a lot easier, getting funding a lot quicker where it's needed in a much more urgent way has been really cool to see. And just like the way you started your business, having a need, right? And I think, like you said, people come across these things, they see needs, and you can jump in, right? We've got this big pool in fintech, and there's so many players, but there's room for every new innovation that's going to solve a problem.
Yeah. And I think the interesting thing is it globally, it's mostly a common language,
True.
how things operate, how the systems are defined, and how the rules work. So from that perspective, it makes it easier for us to
Mhm.
go into new markets and enable new markets to a certain extent. You got to set up the certainly the infrastructure and things like that. But if you go to someone in India and talk about a card payment or how money moves back and forth, the systems may be slightly different, but the experience is the same. The need is the same. Um, the rails that they're operating on are mostly the same and how the protocols are. So like in that case, it does make the world a lot smaller, like you said, because we're kind of talking the same language and people understand each other in that respect.
Yeah, it's been fun to be a part of for sure. I appreciate your input on that. Another thing that's a really big hot topic right now is AI, blockchain, other technologies that have been hot topics right now, and they're influencing the way that people operate. How has that been with the companies that you've been a part of?
Yeah. So most recently, we were looking at AI in a couple of ways. One, could it help us? Initially, it was really on the engineering side. Could it help
Okay.
us um, validate code and code faster in a way that some of the pre-coding and testing and things like that could be done through AI tools, right? And so there's a lot of that going on throughout industry, just not in fintech. I think the other area where AI could impact this business is really on helping bringing data sources together in a more collaborative and consortium way. So for things like identity verification, security, anti-fraud, like those things are really driven by the ability that machine learning and artificial intelligence can bring to the table. So if you look at having these ginormous data sets and the ability to kind of understand who, what, where is happening inside of those data sets, artificial intelligence makes that happen so much faster with such a better rate of efficacy that I think is really going to move forward how we think about security and identity and account creation and account takeover and lots of things that happen in the background. Blockchain is interesting. I know that was the hot topic until AI came into the.
Right.
I was it was IoT, then it was blockchain, and now it's AI.
Yeah.
But there's still a place. I mean, I think we've seen a lot of movement in the adoption of digital currencies and cryptocurrencies, and just in terms of acceptance and how it's used to trade. I think where blockchain really plays a role, I think in our industry is not so much as a payment rail per se, but as a way to uh, create truth in orders and supply chain management, things like that, where it's still part of our business because payments are broader than just someone walking in or shopping online.
True.
It's broader than that. So blockchain helps to define that and enable that and bring some speed and validation to those types of things.
Points. I'm wondering if there are any misconceptions about your industry that you would like to address.
I think the biggest thing in the industry is really for as much progress as we've made, and as much as there's still this inhibition around security based,
True.
right? That's
Okay.
like, am I safe doing these things? Is the industry protecting us? Is my data safe? In spite of the breaches you hear, which are very public and things like that, your data is safe, your card is safe, and if in fact someone else snags your card, like there's mechanisms around there and protections around there to ensure that your personal data is recoverable and so forth. And so I think that's still something that is much, like I said, as much progress as we've made as an industry, that we're always going to be fighting against. That is what I'm doing safe, and that probably becomes more and more challenged, but easier to overcome as we get into more of AI and things like that. Right now it's a bit
Mm,
scary for some people,
right.
and but I think as they start to understand it more and get to experience it more, those will go away. I think about biometric payments and the ability to like walk in. I was talking to someone last week. His company has ability to. They launched in a couple of stadiums in the UK. You walk in, grab a beer, walk out. Nobody, you don't talk to anybody, you don't touch anything. It's paid for. It's AI camera based and proximity based and so forth. And you know, for some people that's nerve wracking, right?
Yeah.
Did I buy it? Did I steal it? Am I going to get double
We've seen
charged?
too many movies.
Yeah. Uh, but conceptually, it's super cool.
Yeah, it
The
really
queues
is.
are slightly shorter and sell more beer. It's great.
Like the ease of use and even seeing how payments from a consumer's experience and a standpoint has changed in the last 10 years. It's night and day. And I feel like when you mentioned, the misconception of the security aspect of it and wondering, especially shopping online, right? I know some people who will not do it because it is something that they're afraid of being, having their identity stolen or that just their card information used. But having worked in the industry myself, I'm with you, right? There are so many steps that are taken to make sure that we stay ahead and that an individual's information is private and secure. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten emails or texts from my card company, just or the issuer, right? Just saying, hey, did you make this purchase? Yes or no? And so they're on top of it. They're looking out for us and they're only able to stay in business if they stay on top of that, is my perspective.
Yep. Yeah, for them, particularly the card brands, it's a reputation game,
Absolutely.
right? So if they're it's trust and performance that determines your relationship with your customer and the industry overall. And for them, it's a trust and reputation game that they're continuously uh, have a high bar that they set for themselves, and for the most part, leaping over it every day in ways that most people don't understand or need to. Like, I don't think they really need to. My dad doesn't need to
Exactly.
understand like all the work that goes on. He just has to understand like it's okay. You
Yes,
can buy your airline
you are
ticket with your
safe.
credit card, and they're not gonna. You don't have to. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. There's so much information to know about it, and you don't need to. You just need to know that you can trust, right? It is a relationship of trust with our finances and with the institutions that we go into working relationship with.
Absolutely.
Do you have any input on how you would approach customer education, especially in a field that's really complex like fintech and payments?
Yeah. So I think the easy thing to do is break it down to really, really simple language and really simple use cases that people can understand and that are can be personal to them and they can identify with. And so I think one of the things that we do in the fintech industry is got a lot of acronyms, got a lot of big fancy words that uh, like people don't really understand. Um, I get caught up in this myself at a cocktail party. What do you do? And I fall into like using words, and then I have to kind of pause and say, well, wait a minute. Like, have you ever done this? Well, this is kind of how we do it, and so forth. And so I think that's the easiest thing, and that's probably true with other things as well. But I think particularly in our industry is like there's a bit of like that big language, big terminology that we should get better at breaking down to get people more comfortable with what's going on in the industry and them understanding it and feeling that they're having that safety net to participate more.
That's really great. I like the giving them an example of something that they can relate to that would help them understand. Some of these aren't, they're not always complex, but there can be some really complex things that you need to help people understand. So I've got two more questions for you. One of them is, what is one major opportunity in the fintech world that is currently being overlooked?
So I think the biggest, a huge opportunity right now is in healthcare, in healthcare payments. It is such a complex web of different providers, payers, payees, from company sponsored plans to individual sponsored plans to government sponsored plans to what's covered, what's not, how the provider gets paid, what's how, in all of that. And there absolutely has to be a way to like there's such an opportunity I think in there to really simplify that piece of it, um, helping people have a better understanding of how what they're paying, what services are being rendered for what they're paying for, and so forth. So I think that's a piece that, and it's going to take both the public and private sectors to come together to do that because so much of our healthcare right now is publicly operated and absolutely publicly regulated. But I think that's a huge opportunity for us to solve for and give people a better experience and just where technology and innovation can really solve there. And I think, the other piece would be, continuing to develop, these frictionless behaviors. I'm a big enthusiast of, as I mentioned, the biometric way of paying for things and making things as many few steps as possible in the transaction to make commerce happen.
Streamlining things in both of those arenas, both in healthcare and in just the time to purchase things. Final question is, what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs that are looking to enter the fintech space?
So two things. I think the first is and this is there's not an original idea.
Yeah,
So, like, know that if you got it, someone else probably thought about it. Just be committed to doing it better and executing your idea to the best of your ability for your customers. So don't get discouraged if someone else comes in and says, "Well, I'm doing that already," or a VC or someone else says, "Well, then how are you going to compete with Google or whatever?" So understand what you want to do, how it's better, how it's going to improve whatever exists out there, and be committed to it and go for it. That's the first thing. And then the second would be, given all of that, don't die on the sword on that idea. Like be open to pivoting if you need to have some fluidity in what you're doing, because as great as we think all of our ideas are, sometimes input from other people can help us refine that and might be able to get there faster or in a better way if we're open to being flexible and a little fluid in how that is. So have some humility uh, to the execution of it so that you can be a better leader and be a better entrepreneur and live the truth of what you're trying to bring to market in a really productive way.